Hello again, welcome back. Carl Asaba, the former Sheffield United striker, still with us. Joe Crann of the Sheffield Star, talking Sheffield Wednesday. James Gregg, delighted to welcome back because we're edging back towards normality on the local scene, and we'll bring James in with his roundup, which could include cricket, golf, speedway, you name it, because we're getting back to it. Football, though, Carl, first of all, do you know, it only occurred to me after we had a conversation and you agreed to come on this show, that we'd not heard from you for years. It was as if when you retired, and bear in mind, you had a career that spanned Brentford, Reading, Gillingham, Sheffield United, Stoke City and Millwall. We just didn't hear anything of you for a while. What was that about? Was that a deliberate sort of...
Well, I think, looking back at it now, a wise old man of 47, I was probably in some form of depression because football was my life. I lived and breathed it. And as I said, family birthdays, if I play bad, would, be cancelled. That's why half my cousins are still 6 and 7 years old. I played bad so much. But I stopped football and I went straight into buying and selling supercars and selling lots of footballers. And it sort of distracted my mental psyche from the fact that I'm in mourning for the loss of the sport that I live for. And I wasn't ready to go into coaching, and I didn't take up any scouting roles for any of my friends, but because I simply couldn't bear to be around football pitches, because you've lived on them, you're there, and to be told by a man in a suit that, no, you can't go on there, pal, no, you can't. I couldn't deal with. And I went out to see Colin Kazim-Richards play in the Euro Championships. Great match against Czechoslovakia in Switzerland. I was sat with his dad. And I was basically sat there crying because I'm watching them and I'm never going to be on these pitches again. And that was it. Just kept away from football. Social media I kept off, and only 3 or 4 months ago have I opened up my Facebook. I've now got 3,500 amazing football fans who follow and talk to me and remind me of my career. But up until then, I completely cut it off, and I must have been depressed and just in denial. It is hard.
Yeah, well, I'm glad that you're over that now. And I think that anybody who's involved, however remotely, in the drug that is football would have some kind of withdrawal symptom. And I'm certainly dreading the day when, I don't get contacted to go to matches for TalkSport as I do at the moment, because it becomes such an all-consuming part of your life. And I'm sure that Joe Crann and James Gregg, at a much earlier stage of their careers than me, will know what I mean. It's more than a job, isn't it?
Yeah, very much so. You do become sort of consumed by it. It's I get to a point, I think, at the end of every season, I often get to a point when I was like, I could do with not watching football for a little bit now, because you kind of footballed out, and then by the time the new seasons come around, you're like, right, ready for it. Well, I can watch as much football as I can now. But and I always think it must be really, really difficult for footballers, from the mental perspective that Carl's mentioned, but also from a physical perspective. You're being paid to keep fit. You're being paid to run around for a living, and it's your job to be in good shape. To have that sort of that taken away from you, and to have that that constant drive to be in good shape taken away. I think if it was me, like if I was a footballer, knowing where my head's at and how lazy I can be, I feel like I would just kind of fall off and just become like a big blob after my playing career, because I'd just, like I say, lose any impetus to stay fit. So I can only imagine sort of the battle that Carl's gone through to walk away from the game and just have nothing there then.
But the hard bit is if you appreciate, all of us love football, it's our life. The bit that's really hard is, if you lost your tongue, you don't play football, but your love with football is expressed via speaking and social commentary, if you're not allowed to take part in the way that you're used to and the way you can, that's the killer, because everyone retires. But I played football on a Sunday morning for a Sunday pub team when I was 12 and 13 playing with men. The way that it's hurt me is I retired for injury, a degenerated disc, and I can't play five-a-side with my friends as I would, because I just want to kick a ball. If I'm kicking the ball in a goal in Woodseats or on Wembley, you're kicking the ball in the goal, and that's what you do. But my pain is that I've not been able to play football. So that's been the hard bit. Not so much the retirement, it's I lost my interaction with the game that I always had.
I think, like you mentioned, Carl, you spoke about being in, like, I suppose, a sort of mourning because someone else made that decision for you, because your injury made that decision for you. Like, it must have taken you a long time to get any sort of real closure on it.
Yeah, really. And I really has only been able to move on in the past 3 or 4 months. And I've opened up and I've spoken to the Gillingham fans, because when I left Gillingham to join Sheffield, it was terrible. I had the Crystal Palace situation, which was terrible, but I kept myself to myself and I didn't say anything. But so people had the wrong, well, they didn't know the full picture. However they see it now, they can decide their own way. But I've had dogs named after me. They probably limped and they were lame and everything, but I never knew this. And it's been lovely the last 3 or 4 months actually getting some form of closure that, fans appreciated me. They still think well of me, and that's been lovely.
I tell you what, James, we'll just try and lighten the mood a little bit now. Are you old enough to have remembered the Hillsborough Derby of 2001?
I was there actually at the game, yeah. So I remember being there, and obviously, I mean, I was there with my dad. In fact, you know what? I'm trying to just jog my memory. I think I was actually in the Wednesday end with my dad, and I'm obviously a Blades fan. No, I don't think that's a secret anymore. So yes, I was. I do remember that very fondly, actually. Yeah, of course I do.
Were you able to celebrate then?
I think that I vividly remember being sort of a quiet part of the main stand at Hillsborough and having a Wednesday fan turn around to me, and obviously thought, little lad, I'll sort of interact with him. And he said, "They're rubbish, aren't they, today?" And I sort of went, yeah.
Really?
Good answer.
That was probably the most bit of pleasure I got. And I always thought I'm never sitting in a different end to the one that you're kind of supposed to be in again. And I've done it several times since. And it's awful, but that was great to see. To see the Blades win that day was brilliant.
Well, in part one, Carl spoke about how uncomfortable he was giving interviews after games in which he'd done well. So we're going to make him squirm now, because in that game, in the second half, facing the phalanx of Blades fans at the opposite end to you, James, Leppings Lane was packed out with Blades fans. This fella, very strongly and cleverly created a goal for Lauren Jaffo, and he scored what proved to be the decisive second Sheffield United goal with a glancing header. Carl, what were your feelings like amid all of that?
Well, I played there. I played at Hillsborough 3 or 4 weeks before for Gillingham, and I scored. And we were all in awe. Gillingham was great ground, really hostile, but Hillsborough's Hillsborough, and it's a massive ground. And so I was a little apprehensive of the day leading up to it, because I've had all the Blades fans coming up to me in the week saying, this is a big match, getting it. And I was nervous. And we're getting changed, and it was bouncing. We're in the dressing room, and you could hear the roof bouncing because of the atmosphere. And it was just the greatest day. There was so much that went on that day. Our fans were incredible. But there was Carlton Palmer doing like a dart sign to Darren Bullock, calling him a pub darts player on the pitch. There was things that were going on that I just couldn't believe, and it was just a great experience.
And the 2 goals. I mean, the second one, you were facing kind of the wrong way, leaning almost the wrong way, but somehow got a very deft header on it into the bottom corner.
I can't head the ball. I'm the only footballer who will never get that concussion issues from heading the ball repetitively because I was terrible at it. But once it worked, and thankfully Kevin Pressman wasn't the most mobile or agile keeper at the time, and he couldn't scamper across to stop it. But it was just a wonderful, wonderful day.
You know, you talk about the understanding of what a big fixture that was, Carl. I mean, Neil Warnock was the manager at the time, wasn't he? And I know that every time he's been back to Hillsborough, even since he's left Sheffield United, he takes it very, very seriously. So I want a bit of an insight now into what he was like in the dressing room, sort of building up to that. I bet even in the training ground during the week, he was really laying it on.
His nose was flared from like Monday to kickoff. It was just a bundle of tension. But when you got into the final bit in the dressing room, he was just sort of smiling because he knew how lucky we were. And he wanted us to actually understand this is something that will live with you forever. Because I played at Wembley 2 or 3 times before, and I'd never experienced such a cauldron, a tight atmosphere as it was. And that's what you've got to enjoy. That's why you play football and you go through the levels, because you might get into that sort of fixture. And afterwards, I'd lost myself. In fact, I was cuddling the gaffer. I was thanking him for signing me that I got to play in it. And Simon Tracy, who's cunning and wise, just pulled me. Sabs, can I have your shirt? I've got this thing I need to give it to. And in the heat of the day, and I've gone, yeah, take the shirt. It didn't mean anything to me.
Oh,
what had I done? I've given him my shirt. He sold it off, and I had to buy it back about, I don't know, 10 years ago. I bought it back.
How much for? How much for?
£3,000 off a multi-millionaire called Lawrence Wasco. He still made me pay for it.
I can't believe it.
No, he
Great
did.
story.
He did, yeah.
Great story. I'll tell you what, though, you mentioned Neil Warnock, and great question from James there about Neil. He did like a striker, didn't he? I mean, you must at one time have been one of 8 or 9 strikers there at Sheffield United. He always said to me, you can never have too many. That must have made life quite hard for strikers there.
Well, you had to perform, and he did. We had a boy called Lawrence Tenshoyville.
Yeah, I remember him, the Dutch guy.
Yeah, and he in training was untouchable, and he's the first person I understood. There was a phrase coined by Tony Pulis called midweek internationals. The boy, you couldn't get near him in training because he was brilliant. Got to a match where there was atmosphere and he went, he crumbled. He was a Cadbury's flake.
Yeah. But training ground players, which brings us to, recruitment for both Sheffield clubs this summer. Particularly difficult, I think, in the case of Sheffield United because of the level they're at now. But is there a certain type of temperament that a player has to have, Carl, to play at Bramall Lane or Hillsborough, do you feel?
Bramall Lane, you have to be committed. You have to be more than, well, now it's different because the players have commitment and they have skill and they have everything because they are the best of the best now. These players are way above our level that we were, maybe Brownie and Jags exempt, but in my day, you had to have full commitment. And if you weren't there and you didn't show it to the fans, you didn't have a long life expectancy. It is a very, very tough place to play. And likewise for Sheffield Wednesday, it must be hard to go there and easy to fail because there's such emphasis. And when the crowd turns on you, there's so many of them, it can really hamper a player's, getting through a tough period.
Mm. Joe, do you think that this is borne in mind in this new approach to recruitment, more realistic approach that Sheffield Wednesday are taking, that the strength of character of the player is as important as the ability?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's something that, Gary's spoken about it a lot. He's spoken about, attitude and the commitment to the cause that he needs his players to have. And I think that was kind of why the end of last season happened the way it did. He was very vocal about the fact that there was players there that he didn't feel were up to it, that weren't up to the battle. It was nothing to do with their ability. It was nothing to do with what they could do with a football. And I think someone for me that sort of encapsulates that is Shay Dunkley. I think Shay's come in and he's obviously a very, very committed footballer. I spoke to Dominic Iorfa about him. He said that they've known each other quite a few years because Shay's from Wolverhampton, and Dom said he's a great guy to have around. He's really bubbly, he's really loud. Sounds like he's quite boisterous as well. And I don't know. Can we swear on this on here?
You've already used the word beginning with B for parts of a male anatomy, and you've used the rear parts of every human being.
Sorry,
as well.
yeah, I'll leave it out. What's another word for what I'm looking for? Wednesday have lacked a little bit of devilment. They've lacked a little bit of someone who's gonna. Sorry, go on.
You could have used balls. That's okay.
Yeah, but yeah, they've lacked someone who's got a little bit of battle in him, and I think that that is obviously the sort of player that they're looking for. There was one bit in the Leicester game with Deli Bashiru. It was against Turare, and he gives him a little bit of a shoulder barge and just like cleans him out. And that's the kind of stuff that Wednesday fans want to see. They want to.
I know what you're meaning now. It ends in housery.
That's the one. Yeah.
And there's a word in front.
That's exactly the word I'm looking for. There isn't really a better word to describe it than that word. But yeah, I think Carl's spoken about that attitude and that that battle. And I think one thing that really does bode well for Wednesday now is the fact that the 3 players they've signed and any other players they do bring in, between now and when the window closes, they know full well the battle that Wednesday have got on. They're signing for a club with a minus 12-point deduction, and they know full well that they're going to a club that there is a chance will find themselves in a relegation battle. And I think the fact that they're aware of that and that they are still willing to sign for Wednesday, for me, says a lot about the kind of people that they are.
Indeed. Bit of siege mentality, Carl, might help. In the meantime, when you finished 9th in the Premier League, Carl, and your funds are limited, and that's said without any disrespect to anybody at Sheffield United, because I think Prince Abdullah's regime has started very, very purposefully. When you're in that situation, recruitment's very difficult, I would imagine.
Well, I'm actually sitting here wondering why no one's actually said anything about us losing players, because we're talking about recruitment and who we can get and who. Half our team are as good as anyone else in the Premier League. You've got Chilwell he's just gone for 50 million or whatever to Chelsea. What's Edna like? We've got some incredible players that I'm thinking, when are they going? Why am I not seeing them being linked to Arsenal when everyone else is at 40 million? Bellerin being linked to PSG at 30 and 40. Our players have not been linked, and I'm not sure why. And I'm a little scared that a week before transfer deadline, we could lose 3 or 4. Has anyone heard? Because I'm wondering if it's just me in my little cave. But are our players being linked with big moves because their performances have deserved it? What's going on?
I think that the ones that were, Carl, have been tied up in new contracts, and I think Alan, you'll kind of back me up on that, won't you? And it's kind of clever, really. Plus, you talk about an Edna Stevens. What's he? 31, 32. He's come from the lower echelons of the Football League pyramid. I think he knows how lucky he is to be where he is. He's just bought a new house in Sheffield. That's it. The demand for a Republic of Ireland international left back, you'd imagine, would be really high. But I think the way that they've kind of got him on a contract that runs till sort of probably 23 or 2024, and that's it. There's no question then people aren't going to want to pay a load of money.
The signing our players on the longer contracts is that sort of scares me a little bit, in that if these players are being linked, no, I know there's a devil you do.
I agree with what you say.
If these players are being linked to Man U and Arsenal and Liverpool, and they're our top earners and our best players, they're then going to be unsettled because, well, we've pushed the boat out to sell you, to sign you, to secure you. You're going to sit here and you're going to play for 3 years, and that's when I'm worried. And that's this season. I think is going to be very telling in, are we going to be able to kick on again? Our players going to be thinking, well, I want to go here, there, and we've then got them for 3 or 4 years on big money, and this is going to be a really, really interesting season to see how Chris and his backroom staff deal with it all. I really hope we start our first 5 games well, because it's not.
Chris talks, hasn't he, about the importance of the club catching up with the progression of himself and the team, really. And certainly from the boardroom, I've heard similar noises acknowledging that. So, it will be interesting to see which way. Just briefly before we move on, what positions, if any, does Sheffield United need to strengthen? I suppose, we'd all like a 20-goal a season striker, but they're not going to be affordable if they're proven, are they?
Well, we've paid the money. We've got good strikers. I think you just got to look at the steel centre midfield. I'll be surprised if there's no bids for Fleck. I think he'd play anywhere, and it's just having cover in case a last-minute transfer comes in. I think we now need to be in that position where we have something up our sleeve if one of the big boys does dip in, because you're either going to lose him or you've got someone unsettled for 6 months to the next window. So I'd like a backup option down the side.
All right, we'll top and tail with your views. Give you a couple of minutes to think about how you think the respective teams will do in the coming season, while James takes us through what is refreshingly, and thank goodness, a fairly busy sporting scene locally now.
It is, yeah, and we're starting to see the return of football. Hallam FC, they've kind of started their pre-season, if you like, and they've got a full fixture list planned. Who knows when fans are going to be allowed in to those grounds, because we're dying to go up to Sandygate and up to the coaching horses. Go on, Alan.
Sorry to interrupt you there, James, but they are allowing them now.
They are
a limited number of spectators being allowed. Yeah,
they are, but it's good. But it's all protocol driven, isn't it? And also number rates. I've heard and I've sort of read this morning. If number rates go up slightly, curtains for that, which is baffling. I'll come on to that more at the end, actually, of the roundup, which is a bit of a shame. But I'm more thinking things like ice hockey, rugby league, Steelers. They're definitely going to have a much shortened season, and they rely on getting 6,000 or 7,000 people down to the arena and getting that money in, and people buying all the merchandise and the ice creams and all that kind of thing. They've only just been allowed back by the government to resume training on the ice. Same with junior teams and lower sides, which are friends of the programme, like the Sheffield Steel Dogs as well. No schedule for their season announced yet. Likewise for the Sheffield Eagles. I don't think they're going to have any kind of a season now, and that's only in the second tier of rugby league as well. It puts Eagles in a really perilous position as well. If you're a fan and you enjoy going to places like the arena to watch the ice hockey, or the EIS to watch the Sharks, who are again holding their breath for some kind of a season as well, buy a pin badge, buy a t-shirt, maybe buy some tickets in advance for when things do resume as well, because if you don't, it's cash flow. That's the problem with all these things, that if they could get fans back in, things would be all right. So if you are a fan of those things, or you loosely sort of like going down casually to watch the Sharks or the Eagles or whoever it is, get some merchandise bought or whatever it may be. Testing in weird times as well, both for our Football League clubs as well. Blades are taking on Preston. That's tomorrow night on Friday after a good win against a fairly strong Derby County side the other night. And then it's just 10 days after that until Wolves at Bramall Lane for the first Premier League fixture. So not sure there's been that much chat about signings incoming. I think Chris Wilder reckoned there was hopefully going to be 5, couple of loan signings, pointing out that there's an international break as well for good measure. Thanks a lot for that, lads. That really helps with signings for teams like Sheffield United. And of course, we just heard from Joe talking about some of their signings as well. We've got Izzy Brown on loan from Chelsea, and of course Shea Dunkley as well. Let's hope that we are allowed some fans back into Hillsborough, because starting on -12, I think they're going to need some of that Hillsborough support, certainly in the opening stages of that season. But I did spot a tweet from a local Football League club nearby to here, and it said you can go for 10 pints with 10 mates at a pub, you can pop for a game of bowling, and if you want, you can maybe even go for your beard trimming and your eyebrows doing, if that's what you're kind of into. But at the moment, it might be a little bit too dangerous to go up to Sandygate. But they are going to be allowed back in, as you said, Alan. And it's, I look forward to sharing a pint with you up there and watching Hallam FC. So that'll be great stuff. So I'll leave that hanging one with you. But I just hope that you can. And if you can, do go and support your local non-league side.
Indeed. Second that, normal life is starting to return and sport is part of normal life. End of story. Get it back. Let's get back into watch it. I'm not going to mention playoffs to you. I had it written down here. I had playoffs written down as a question for Carl, but then I saw his record with Brentford, Gillingham. That was in the incredible game against Manchester City, and Sheffield United against Wolves in 2003. And I thought, I won't ask you that.
Just leave it. Yeah,
leave it. Yeah. But he had a great career of 120 goals, and he scored some very, very memorable ones, and it's been great to catch up with you. Before you go, and we leave Joe as well, the Blades this season, that's one hell of an act to follow, 9th place. Surely even just staying in the Premier League would be an achievement to follow that. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think I'd be delighted if they can just do themselves justice and let the players continue to prove people wrong and just get all the plaudits, because they're brilliant. They've done so well. I just hope we don't expect them to be pushing for Europe again, and accept that if we do stay in the Premier League, it's incredible. We're playing against the best teams and we're playing football to be proud of. We're not playing dirty tactics, John Beck with long grass in the corner to keep the ball on. We're playing as good a football as any. We've got good players, and I hope these players now take it on another level, and just we can see them grow and then go to the Man U's and in a nice way, and just keep everyone happy. Thank
you, Carl. There you go, Joe. None of that something housery there from Sheffield United. But you want to see a bit more from Sheffield Wednesday, and you think they'll produce it as well?
Yeah, look, I'll be honest. If we finish 1 point above the relegation places, I'll be happy with this season. I think given the uphill battle they've got, I think, obviously, if you can, obviously, I mean, Gary's got a good record. He with what he did with Birmingham, they lost 9 points and still finished comfortably, clear of the relegation positions. If Wednesday can do that, then it'd be great. It would be nice to get to the end of the season and not have to be looking over your shoulder and worrying about what's going on behind you. But that being said, 12 points is no child's play. So if we can, if we can finish in last game of the season, it takes goal difference to keep us up. I'll take that. It'll be a lot more stress than I'd like, but for me, the key this season is just survival. I think you can reassess that maybe in January, depending on how things are going. But I think that's always got to be the first priority now.
There we go. A pre-season optimism in this case is both clubs staying up. Would be achievement, would be relative success. You have to be realistic. But brilliant thoughts. Thank you to Joe Crann of the Sheffield Star. We'll keep you reading your updates, and glad that you'll be back in Blighty soon. Carl Asaba, what a pleasure to chat with you. I'm sure I'll see you on the street corners many times. Over the coming weeks and months. And James, thank you to you. And when we do have that pint at Hallam, I really wish it could be this. I really wish it could be Ward's Best Bitter. There we are. There's the old brewery behind me. Rescued that from my mother-in-law's place. It was going to go to a charity shop, but no, there we are. The brewery buildings proudly on the big wall here. So cheers, everybody. And they were Sheffield United match sponsors, by the way, at one time, the Ward's Brewery. And with that, and they're no longer in existence, so I'm not advertising anything. Get away with it.
Now they sponsor you, Big
Let's have a show next week. Thanks for watching. See you then. Bye-bye.